Have you ever caught yourself lying not to others, but to yourself? You know those moments where a part of you senses something is wrong, but you push it down, wrap it in a more comfortable story, and move on like nothing happened. That's not just denial. That's not just being forgetful. That's self-deception, and it's not a glitch in the human system. It's a feature. According to Freud, it's one of the most essential and disturbing parts of who we are. We like to think of ourselves as rational beings. We imagine that we make decisions based on logic, that we know what we want, that we understand our motives. But the truth is far more uncomfortable. Freud said that most of what drives us, our fears, our desires, our choices, comes from the unconscious, a vast, hidden part of the mind that we can't access directly. And because we can't face these truths, we invent illusions. We tell ourselves stories to cover the gaps. We fabricate reasons that feel right, even if they're false. We lie to ourselves to protect ourselves.
Click subscribe to this channel to get more profound insights.
But here's what's even more chilling. We don't just lie to avoid pain. We lie because we're addicted to the comfort that deception gives us. It's not just a defense mechanism. It's a craving, a drug, a survival instinct that's evolved into a lifestyle. We deceive ourselves about our relationships, about our ambitions, about who we are and what we're capable of. And we do it so well that most of the time, we don't even know we're doing it. Let me ask you something. How many of your beliefs are really yours? How many of the things you say you value, truth, justice, love, success, are things you chose freely rather than things you inherited, absorbed, or constructed to fit in? Freud would say that your conscious mind is like the tip of an iceberg, and everything you think you know about yourself, that's just the surface. Beneath that, hidden, repressed, denied, are the real forces shaping your life. Think about the last time you made a bad decision. Not a mistake, but something deeper, like staying in a toxic relationship, or chasing a goal that didn't fulfill you, or pretending to be happy when you were slowly falling apart. What stories did you tell yourself? Maybe you said, "It's not that bad," or "This is just temporary," or the classic, "I can handle it." But deep down, a part of you knew. A whisper inside you was trying to speak, and you drowned it out with noise. That's self-deception. Freud called this the ego's defense. It's a psychological firewall that protects us from truths we're not ready to handle. But the cost of that protection is enormous. It means we live in a dream, a curated version of reality where we are always the hero, always the victim, always justified. And the longer we live in that dream, the more detached we become from the rawness of life, from truth, from growth, from real transformation. So why do we do it? Why would we choose illusion over reality? The answer is simple and terrifying, because reality is brutal. It forces us to see ourselves as we really are, not as we wish to be. And that confrontation can feel like death, the death of ego, the death of identity, the death of the comfortable lies we've built our lives around. But what if I told you that facing that death is the beginning of freedom? Let's zoom in on a concrete example. Imagine someone who says, "I can't leave my job because I have responsibilities." That sounds noble, reasonable, but dig deeper. Maybe the truth is, I'm afraid to fail at something new. or I don't believe I'm good enough to succeed elsewhere. The surface story is protective, but the real story, the one buried under layers of rationalization, is the one running the show. And here's the kicker: the more intelligent you are, the better you are at self-deception. Intelligence doesn't make you immune, it makes you a master manipulator of your own mind. You can craft elaborate arguments, convincing narratives. You can even gaslight yourself. Why? Because you're not trying to find the truth. You're trying to find comfort, and the truth rarely feels comfortable. Freud's brutal truth is this: we are addicted to self-deception because it allows us to maintain the illusion of control. It allows us to pretend that we are coherent, consistent, rational beings, but we're not. We're fragmented, chaotic, full of contradictions. And we spend our lives trying to hide that, not just from others, but from ourselves. What's even more dangerous is that society rewards self-deception. We praise people for having it all together, for being confident, for being certain. But certainty is often just well-polished denial. The people who seem most stable are sometimes the ones furthest from their own truth, and the ones who struggle, who question everything, are often closer to something real. So here's a question that might shake you. What truth about yourself are you most afraid to know? Not admit? No. The kind of truth that, once seen, can't be unseen. The kind that would force you to change everything. The kind that would burn down the life you've built around your current identity. Because that's what self-deception protects, not your feelings, but your identity. The story you tell yourself about who you are. And Freud warned us the stronger that story becomes, the harder it is to see the truth. We cling to our illusions not because they're beautiful, but because they make sense. Because without them, we'd have to rebuild who we are from the ground up. The mirror lies how your mind hides the truth from you. Imagine standing in front of a mirror. You think you're seeing yourself clearly, your reflection, your features, your identity. But what if that mirror is distorted? Not warped like in a funhouse, but subtly, invisibly shaped by everything you believe, fear, deny, and desire. What if the person you see isn't you, but the version of you your mind has carefully constructed to protect your sanity? That's what Freud suggests. He tells us that the mind doesn't show us the truth, it shows us what we can handle. And sometimes, what we can handle is a lie. A beautiful, functional, necessary lie. Because the real truth about who we are, what we want, what we've done, or what we've denied might be too overwhelming to bear all at once. So we create mirrors that lie to us. And then we spend our lives mistaking those lies for reality. But this is where repression comes in. Freud's idea was that the unconscious mind is filled with thoughts, impulses, and memories that are too painful or socially unacceptable to acknowledge. So we push them down. We bury them, not because we choose to, but because our minds do it automatically, like a psychological immune system. And yet, those buried truths don't disappear. They leak out in other ways, in dreams, in slips of the tongue, in irrational fears, in self-sabotage. The mirror may hide the cracks, but the cracks are still there. Have you ever done something and then asked yourself, why did I do that? Maybe you lashed out at someone you love. Maybe you procrastinated on something important. Maybe you ruined a good thing for no clear reason. Freud would say the answer lies in the unconscious. That part of you knows something your conscious mind won't admit, and it acts out. It tells the truth through behavior when words fail. Let's make this real. Suppose you constantly attract toxic relationships. On the surface you say, "I just have bad luck." But maybe, deep down, you believe you don't deserve love. Or maybe love, for you, was always connected to pain in childhood. That part of your mind, the part that learned to associate love with suffering, guides your choices like a hidden hand. And your conscious mind justifies everything after the fact. That's self-deception in its most haunting form, living out an unconscious truth while consciously denying it. Freud didn't just expose this dynamic, he warned us about its consequences. Because when we live behind the mirror, we stop growing. We build identities on false foundations. We chase goals that aren't truly ours. We fight battles that aren't really about the enemy in front of us. And worst of all, we hurt the people around us while insisting we're doing the right thing. Have you noticed how easy it is to justify your worst behavior? How your mind can twist anything to protect the self-image you've built? That's the genius and the tragedy of the ego. It's designed to maintain a coherent sense of self at all costs, even if that self is a lie. It filters reality. It edits pain. It writes narratives that make you the hero, the victim, the good one. But what if you're not always the hero? What if you've been the villain in someone else's story, and your mind erased it to preserve your illusion of goodness? These are the kinds of questions that Freud forces us to ask, not because he wanted to make us suffer, but because he believed that healing begins with truth, and truth begins with confrontation. So let's confront something painful. How many of your life choices have been based on fear disguised as logic? The job you stayed in, the person you didn't pursue, the apology you never gave. You told yourself it wasn't the right time, that it wouldn't work out, that it's better this way. But was that really the truth? Or was it your mind protecting you from rejection, failure, or vulnerability? The mirror lies, and it lies so well that we don't even see it as deception, we see it as common sense. We say things like, "That's just who I am," or "That's how the world works." But maybe that's not who you are. Maybe that's who you needed to become to survive. And maybe the world doesn't work that way, it just works that way for the version of you who refuses to see clearly. Freud believed this self-deception was not a moral failure, but a psychological necessity. We needed it to cope with trauma, with shame, with the impossible expectations of society. But what was once protective can become prison. The lies we told ourselves to survive can turn into the lies that keep us stuck. So here's a dangerous question. What would happen if you saw yourself completely, without filters, without excuses, without the mirror? Would you feel free, or would you collapse? Would you be able to love yourself, knowing the full truth? Or have you only ever loved the version of you that fits the story? The brutal truth is that your mind doesn't want you to know yourself. Not really. It wants you to feel safe. And self-deception is the currency of psychological safety. But safety is not the same as truth. And in the long run, it's not the same as peace. Because somewhere beneath the mirror, The real you is waiting. Not the polished one, not the perfect one, but the one who knows. Yeah. And the question is, how long will you keep hiding from that version of yourself? The war within, why we fight ourselves to protect the lie. There's a battle happening inside you right now, whether you feel it or not. It's subtle, quiet, like background noise you've learned to ignore. But it's there. The war is between two versions of you, the self that wants to wake up and the self that wants to stay asleep. The self that longs for truth and the self that fears what that truth will demand. Freud called this struggle repression, but it's deeper than that. It's a civil war of the soul, and the battlefield is your daily life. Every time you feel resistance to change, every time you avoid a difficult conversation, every time you distract yourself with comfort or noise or busyness, you're not just being lazy or indecisive, but you're engaged in a war against your own awakening, because waking up means loss. The loss of the stories that have kept you safe, the loss of the illusions that have shaped your identity, and most terrifying of all, the loss of the person you thought you were. That's why we fight ourselves, because the truth doesn't just set you free, it sets everything else on fire first. It dismantles your justifications. It threatens your ego. It challenges your morality. It reveals all the ways you betrayed yourself. And that's not just painful, it's humiliating. It's annihilating. You begin to see that many of the things you blamed others for were actually your choices. That the pain you felt wasn't always inflicted, it was sometimes invited. That your suffering wasn't always noble, it was sometimes self-imposed. This is the moment where most people turn back, where they retreat into distraction, addiction, denial. Because the war gets too loud, and who wouldn't want to escape that? But Freud warns us, avoidance doesn't end the war. It just drives it deeper. The unconscious doesn't disappear when we ignore it, it festers. It reappears in disguise, in anxiety, in depression, in patterns that seem random but are anything but. Have you ever noticed how the same problems keep showing up in your life, just with different faces, with the same arguments, the same heartbreaks, the same failures? That's not coincidence. That's your unconscious mind recreating scenarios over and over again, hoping you'll finally see the hidden script. Hoping you'll stop blaming the outside world and turn inward. But most of us don't. We defend the lie. We protect it like a wounded animal, because we've made it sacred. We say things like, that's just my personality, or I've always been this way, or it's not my fault. But those are not identities. They are defenses. They are walls built around the truth. Because if we admitted that we could change, that we've always had the power, then we'd have to take responsibility. And responsibility is the most terrifying freedom there is. It means that no one is coming to save you. That your healing, your growth, your truth, it's on you. Freud didn't believe in easy answers. He thought the human psyche was a labyrinth, a network of conflict and contradiction. And at the center of it is our own refusal to see clearly. We fight ourselves because we're terrified that if we stopped fighting, we'd have to feel. And what we'd feel, first and foremost, is grief. Grief for the years we lost in illusion. Grief for the people we pushed away while protecting our lies. Grief for the potential we abandoned because we were too afraid to face ourselves. But grief is not the enemy, it's the doorway. When you allow yourself to feel that grief, not suppress it, not intellectualize it, but feel it, you begin to heal. Not in some magical, overnight way, but in the slow, painful, honest kind of way that actually transforms you. The war within begins to quiet. The self that was buried starts to breathe. And for maybe the first time, you begin to live in alignment with something real. So ask yourself, what part of you are you still at war with? Is it the part that wants more from life? The part that's tired of pretending? The part that's angry or ashamed or deeply afraid? What would happen if you stopped fighting it and listened? Because that's where the shift starts, not with answers, but with attention, with the willingness to sit with the very thing you've spent your life running from. Freud knew that the unconscious isn't some distant, dark realm, it's right here, beneath the surface, speaking in symbols and symptoms and slips of the tongue. And when we stop denying it, when we stop fighting ourselves, we can finally begin to understand it. And understanding is the beginning of freedom. But freedom doesn't come without a price. You will lose things when you stop lying to yourself. You will lose comfort. You will lose certainty. You will lose parts of your identity that no longer serve you. But what you gain in return is immeasurable. Clarity, integrity, power. A life that is not built on illusion, but on the raw, unfiltered truth of who you are. So the final question is this: are you willing to lose the lie in order to find yourself? Because you can't have both. The war within only ends when one side surrenders. And the lie will never surrender on its own. You have to make the choice. You have to decide which version of you will survive.